Hello, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you guys are ready for a lot of book yapping today. We're going to be condensing September and October together, which at the end of the day isn't too many books, but September I read a lot of like 600-page books, so I only got through like 4. So I figured I'd save them all to talk about together. So let's have a lot of yapping today. I did a lot of series reading, so I'm going to try and pair them off together where they belong. Let's get into it, shall we? So first off, I started a series called Crown of Feathers, which is the first book also in the series by Nicki Preto. This is a book about Phoenix Riders, which I was immediately drawn in because, like, as cool as dragon riders are, I was just really on this like Phoenix kick for some reason. I wanted to read this other book called The Phoenix Keeper too, but I didn't get to it. But yes, I was really on this Phoenix kick, and the book's kind of about sisters, but mostly one of the two sisters. And she just dreams of being a Phoenix rider, and her sister does too, but she's just kind of got like a different level of passion for it. So when the two of them find Phoenix eggs and try to hatch them, and only one of them hatches, there's a bit of drama, and the sisters get into a bit of a disagreement and end up splitting off, and we follow the younger sister as she, pursues her dream of being a Phoenix rider. She's like, I hatched a Phoenix, it's time to be a fucking Phoenix rider, bitch. So she goes off to do that, but there's a bit of drama because she finds out that the place that's like secretly training Phoenix riders after this whole war thing happened, they only train boys. And she meets this other kind of street rat kind of girl who's like, well, then just be a boy. And she's like, damn, you're right. And so she goes under disguise and joins this boys' school for Phoenix riders, and it gets the training, and there's a lot of political drama happening in the background, but she's mostly focused on being a Phoenix rider, even though it will all catch up to her eventually. And that's what that is mostly about. The next book I read was the second book in the series. There are 3, but I didn't get to the third one because I think the second book, I kind of suffered the second book slump. It was a little like slower of a pace, kind of more about character relationships than like world building, which was, okay. There was at one point this like reveal that totally had me like gasping, and I was like, but that was about the only like, big T of that book. There was more, character drama. People are getting into disagreements. Secrets are coming out that we didn't think we would be able to handle, and some people are handling them and some people aren't. It's very dramatic. But mostly just kind of like slow burny. The most interesting part of the book was the epilogue, so I am kind of kind of looking forward to the third book, hoping that it will be a little bit more quick-paced and battle-focused, because I think that's the cool aspect of the Phoenix riding, is like how they go about battle. But who knows? Who knows? Perhaps you will hear about me talking about Wings of Shadow next month if I get there. But yes, that is the first 2 books of Crown of Feathers. Obviously, I don't want to talk too much about the second book because I don't want to spoil anything, but just know I did feel like there was a bit of second book slump, and I'll let you know if the third book's eventually worth it, because it is on my shelf, so I'll get there eventually. The next series that I stepped into was called The Book That Wouldn't Burn. I don't remember what the actual series is called. I just remember that's what the first book's called. And yeah, I thought this was a really cool kind of trippy book in a way. It was trippy without you realizing it until you were in too far, and I really like that. You just kind of like get into this spiral and you didn't even know you were in it. So I thought that was really interesting about this book. It's about these 2 main characters. One is this girl from the desert named Livira, and one is named Ivar, and he lives inside this big fucking library that's like filled with towers of books and just endless books, and he just lives there with a couple of his siblings. I say in quotes, they're not actually related, but they were raised together, and that's all they've ever known is the inside of the library, just like Livira has only ever known the wasteland of the desert. But one day these soldiers show up, and some kind of combat goes down with these weird, like, insurgent creatures, and the soldiers defeat them, and they take the desert kids, including Livira, back to the big city. And it turns out there's a big library in that city. And Levier's like, I think that I could work there. And the soldier kind of helps her out, gets her an apprenticeship, and she starts working in the library. And I don't want to say too much because this book kind of works its magic in a very particular way. But I will say I thought it was a very, very good read. I actually listened to the audiobook of this because I was doing a lot of remodeling and painting, and I can't exactly read a book while I'm painting, but I didn't want to do nothing. So I listened to the audiobook for this and also the sequel, which was called The Book That Broke the World. I would have read the third book too, but it's actually not out yet. The sequel takes a whole nother step to the aspects that they develop in the first book and introduces a couple of other characters. You get to meet Kelcha, who's a very like kind of aggressive but oppressed person. You know, she works as a slave, but she doesn't always want to be a slave, and some things happen to her that ends up making it so that she might not have to be forever, including her brother too. And they end up, you know, getting involved in some weird stuff with some weird voices and ghosts that kind of mislead them and maybe lead them in the right direction too sometimes. It's an interesting thing. I cannot talk too much about the sequel because it really does depend on the first book, but just know I really enjoyed this series and I think it's so worth it. As soon as the third book's out, I'm definitely going to either listen or read it. It was very enjoyable. That was The Book That Broke the World and The Book That Wouldn't Burn. The next duology I read was The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. This is a book about kind of fairy tales gone wild. You follow a girl who has always kind of had bad luck. Her and her mom have been moving around a lot because sometimes when they settle down places, just like weird stuff starts happening. You know, like she'll wake up and her hair will be braided and her mom will just be like, "We're leaving." You know, like just weird stuff happens, or like bad luck, like they'll park their car somewhere and it'll get like completely broken into and destroyed and her mom's like, "We gotta move." And you're like, wow, maybe she's getting stalked. And you learn that she was always raised around this book written by her grandmother. Not directly raised around it, but there's always been like whispers on the hinge of her life because her grandmother wrote this like very iconic fairy tale book that's kind of become a cult classic, and you know, collectors are very particular about it. So her and her mother have always kind of struggled with people approaching them about the book and about their grandmother, and it's always just been a weird inkling in her head. And eventually she starts to feel like maybe things in the book weren't always just a story. And she meets this guy who knows a lot about the book and helps her kind of guide through this weird part of her life where things are going horribly wrong for her and she has no idea why. So it's kind of a fun little like adventure into a fairy tale world where the fae are doing their fae fuckery, and I always love the fae fuckery, you know, where you have to be particular with your wording and, you know, really listen to what people are saying because they could be trying to fuck with you, you know? So I really thought that that was fun. Which led into the sequel, The Night Country, which is kind of after everything that happens in the first book, a recovery. You know, people are like kind of trying to grasp the consequences of their actions and the changes that have happened in their life. You know, like our main girl just had a crazy adventure and she's expected to just go back to like working in a coffee shop and like going to college, and she's like, what the fuck? And she's got other friends too that are like really trying to grapple with a big change in their lives, and there is some weird, you know, culty stuff happening in the background, but our main character tries to ignore it for as long as possible, and of course it doesn't really go as planned. It took me a little longer to get through the sequel because, again, it's kind of a slower, more like recovery book, but I thought it was a good cap to this, to the duology, you know? I could have done with just the first book, but the second book wasn't horrible either. Next, I listened to another audiobook because I was doing some more painting. Surprise! I listened to A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by Kingfisher, and Let me just say, she never fucking disappoints. This was about a girl named Mona who works in a bakery, and she's in a world where people have magic, but it's kind of more like specific, you know? Someone might be really good at making flowers grow, or really good at, you know, making water listen to them. But then there's also like war wizards who can command lightning and like fireballs and shit like that. But our main character, Mona, like, she's just good with bread, you know? She's good at making sure the bread rises. She's got this cool sourdough start that, like, you know, eats whatever, but is like the best sourdough in the city. And she's just really good with bread. But one day, she wakes up and there's a dead body in her bakery. And from then on, her life just totally changes because this girl in her bakery is dead and has been murdered, and they might be coming for her next. It kind of seems like they might be. And she gets involved with the murdered girl's younger brother, and the two of them are kind of drawn into this like political mystery involving wizards and the queen and all of that stuff. And I thought it was just really fun, you know? It was definitely like a younger age book, but I thought it was so fun. I loved it. There's just a quote where they're like, Mona, you have to do something, and she's like, but bread. I'm like, yes, girl, yes, bread. But yeah, she learns how to use her bread in more ways than she ever imagined, and realizes that maybe she had more power than she knew. I loved this book. It was so much fun. It was such a good read. Made me smile. Next up, I read A Year of the Reaper by Makiia Lucier. This was kind of a more like darker toned book. It's about like war and, you know, people recovering from war and a big plague happening. And we follow the main character, Cass, who we very quickly learned kind of went through some shit. You know, a couple of years ago, he was supposed to go and like do this little mission with a couple of other soldiers, and they got kidnapped by like the enemy soldiers and taken to prison and forced into like a labor camp. And 3 years later, he's finally out of the labor camp, returning to his kingdom. And Cass kind of had some shit happen to him. He got really sick, and now all of a sudden he can see ghosts. And so he's kind of grappling with that as he comes back. He tries not to acknowledge the fact that he can see ghosts, but sometimes it's hard to, you know. You see someone that you recognize, and it's kind of hard not to be like, oh shit, they're dead. Especially when a big plague happened and a lot of people died. But we quickly learned that Cass is kind of the lord of this little, like, castle town, and his brother has been looking for him for years, and you know, there's a new like high lady in charge and all of this stuff, and a baby's been born, and peace has been established with the kingdom that took him prisoner. And there's a lot of drama because he's kind of like, well, those people like were just torturing me like a year ago, so I don't really want to be peaceful with this lady that married into our house for peace, but like I'll do my best. And yeah, he kind of develops this relationship with a female historian, and her job is to obviously record history. And she's been trying to record her grandfather's history from when he traveled here with the new High Lady. But things are really hard because most of the party died, and the people who survived are like traumatized and don't want to talk about it. But maybe there's more reasons why they don't want to talk about it. And so Cass and the historian kind of try to unravel what happened while also settling into life in a plague recovering city, and, you know, traumatized people, starving people, bad things are happening. But it's all fun and games, right? You know, we can see ghosts. I don't know. I thought it was fun. I think that the ghost part could have definitely played more of an aspect, especially because it's like one of the first things that happens in the book. That's why I don't care about talking about it. But I don't think that it played as many fun roles as I expected to, you know, like I kind of expected more evidence to be gathered from ghosts, but there were definitely some very nice moments with spirits involved that I appreciated. And I think the overall mystery was really, really good. I'm a sucker for the kind of mystery that was in this book, so totally loved it, totally ate it up. I liked it as a little single off. I was really glad that it wasn't part of a series because I don't think I would have continued it if it was. I think this was really well wrapped up and tidy. Unlike that other mystery series I read about that like school where every book took forever and you never learned anything. But yes, it was a good read, good quick read. Definitely worth the time, I think. Lastly, I read one of my all-time favorite books now, The West Passage by Jared Pechacek. I'm probably butchering that last name, but um, God, this book was so great. I was dying to read this for a really long time. I almost debated getting it on my Kindle, but I went to the bookstore and it was there waiting for me. So I got it, and I'm glad I did because the book has like such beautiful art in it, and having a physical copy is just all the difference to me. God, it was so fun to read. Every chapter had its own little picture, and then all of the parts that were like in the book had their own drawing. It was, oh, so perfect. And not to mention, this is a part of a kind of genre that I've made up called absurd fantasy, and I love it. I think Piranesi from the last book video fits really well into this category of fantasy where just like weird shit happens. But yes, we follow two characters in this book. Both of them start as apprentices to their respective roles. One of them is apprentice to the role of being a guardian, which means they basically like know a bunch about this big monster that lives under the the world and plans to eat everybody, and their job is to stop it from doing that. No pressure at all. And our other apprentice is apprentice to the lady of the house, which or the mother of the house, which they live in a place called Grey Tower, and so the mother of the house takes care of everybody, you know, she's in charge. And Grey House is in charge of the dying and the birthing of people. So they basically do all of the burials, and then like they help people give birth. And that's basically it. And they sing a lot of songs, and they don't write any of their history down. It's all like by memory. But yes, we follow those two, and very quickly one of them has to take on their role much sooner than they expected, and things kind of go a little awry when trying to do that, and they have to go on a quest to one of the other towers. And there's 5 total towers. There's blue, black, red, yellow, and gray, and so they have to go to Black Tower, and they've heard a lot of rumors that shit's going down in Black Tower. People are having political drama, there's backstabbing, there's rumors, there's gossip, there's all sorts of shit going on over there. And it's gonna be a little bit different from Grey Tower, where everybody's just chilling and like cleaning and singing all the time. But not to mention the travel there is going to be quite dramatic. But yes, that is mostly what this book is about, is the journey from one tower to another and all of the shit needed to accomplish just getting there. This world's really interesting. They basically live in this place called the Palace, and it's just like this giant continent almost that everybody lives in. There's different boroughs around each of the towers, and each of the towers is responsible for different things. I thought this world was just really fucking cool. The things inside of the world are really cool, because it's not just like humans that live here. In fact, humans are really rare, but there's like people who have like twigs for hair and like grow like leaves and stuff, and then there's like rabbit people and owl people and like a bunch of other stuff. And that's what makes the drawings even more cool, is you get to see like in the background, you'll be like, oh look, that's like an interesting kind of character that I've never seen before. And also it's just cute to be able to like, oh look, there's Frin in that picture and he looks so cute, and like all of that, and like, you know, kind of play Where's Waldo with them in the drawings. Oh god, I love this book. I could talk about it all day. Oh, I need more people to read it so that I can, you know, just yammer about all of the other details that I don't want to spoil. But yes, big recommendation on the West Passage. And that wraps up my September, but mostly October reading, and I will see you guys next month for some more books. I've already started reading for this month, and I hope that I will have some good stuff in store for you. I hope you enjoyed this yapping sesh, and I will see you again soon.